Hi everyone, this is the Nordic Venture Show, your guide to the exciting world of Nordic startups and venture capital. In today's episode, we're exploring a startup called Aircohol.
Okay, so you know how we love to dig into these kind of cutting edge companies tackling big problems, and well, this one really caught my eye.
Yeah.
You sent over some super interesting stuff on a company called Aircohol
Right.
and their mission to make sustainable alcoholic beverages, but get this, from captured CO2 from fermentation.
Really interesting stuff.
I know, right? It's like turning pollution into a party.
Cheers to that.
And you've sent over a bunch of excerpts from Aircohol's website itself, right?
Yeah, I thought that would be the best place to start. So we've got a good look at their technology, their story, the potential impact you're aiming for, and even info on their team and the collaborations that are helping them along the way.
Makes sense.
It's a good mix.
So our mission for this deep dive, with you all listening, is to really break this down.
Sure.
How does this technology actually work?
Yep.
What are the potential upsides for the environment and the drinks industry? And really, what does this tell us about the future of sustainable consumption? I mean, it's a big question.
Big question.
So let's jump right in. Aircohol's tagline is so bold.
Yeah.
They say they make drinkable alcohol from air.
Right off the bat, you think science fiction.
Total science fiction.
But then you see the details.
Right.
They're using the CO2 naturally produced by breweries and distilleries as their starting point.
That makes a lot more sense.
So not pulling it from thin air yet, at least, but from a super concentrated source.
Yeah, so smart to go to the source.
Exactly.
But how do they then turn that captured CO2 into something you can actually sip on?
Well, that's where the magic happens.
The website gives us some hints, though, right?
It does.
Sounds like their tech is built to fit right into existing brewing and distilling setups.
Yeah, they talk about integrating it directly into the current fermentation and drink-making processes.
So not some massive overhaul.
Right, which makes adoption way more appealing, I imagine.
Makes total sense. So the key step is that it captures the CO2, the yeast or whatever microbes are producing during fermentation. So instead of it just going poof into the atmosphere, it's collected, contained.
And then get this, they say this captured CO2 becomes the only ingredient in their process.
It's a bold statement for sure.
It is, and that's where it gets really mind-blowing.
Yeah, it totally changes how we think about CO2 from waste product to valuable resource.
Right, and they're not giving away all their secrets, of course,
Yeah.
but they say they then use this CO2 to produce ingredients that are fed back into the alcohol fermentation process.
Yeah, pointing toward a closed-loop system, which is super fascinating.
So cool. A closed loop fueled by a byproduct. I mean, come on.
It's clever.
It's super clever.
And it could mean that alcohol production doesn't have to rely so much on agricultural markets. You know?
Totally, like less vulnerable to price swings or bad harvests or the environmental impacts of traditional farming.
Exactly.
And they're aiming for zero CO2 emissions.
Which is a huge goal.
Huge.
But starting with captured CO2 as their only initial ingredient puts them on the right track.
If they can use all of that CO2 in their processes, the net emissions from those drinks could be seriously reduced.
Right. But let's think about this from the distilleries and breweries' point of view.
Sure.
You know, beyond the obvious environmental wings, Aircohol lays out some pretty convincing business reasons to get on board.
Yeah, they do.
First off, they claim a over 50% reduction in carbon footprint.
That's not insignificant.
No, not at all.
And in a market where people are increasingly concerned about the environment, that's a real selling point.
Right.
It could also help navigate future environmental regulations.
Yeah, for sure.
And potential carbon taxes.
Right, and it gets even better because Aircohol suggests this could be a very profitable business case, you know, turning waste CO2 into a premium product.
So it's not just good for the planet. It could be good for profits, too.
Oh, exactly.
If they can extract valuable ingredients or even create new products from that captured CO2, it turns a cost into a potential revenue stream. And they talk about premium sustainable beverages. So it seems like they see a growing market for environmentally responsible alcohol.
For sure. And they also mention the possibility of needing fewer traditional ingredients, which I'm curious about.
Yeah. How does capturing CO2 mean they need less barley or grapes or whatever?
That's the million-dollar question.
Well, they say their unique Aircohol technology generates ingredients from CO2 that are then put back into fermentation.
Right.
So while they're keeping the specifics under wraps, they're probably using some pretty advanced bioprocessing techniques, maybe engineered microorganisms or new catalytic processes to convert that CO2 into usable stuff like sugars.
That's incredible.
It's cutting-edge stuff.
Yeah, and it could really reduce how much we rely on traditional agriculture.
Definitely.
And they say they're aiming for delicious new taste experiences.
I mean, who wouldn't be interested in that?
Right. It's a great hook.
Novelty and taste are huge in the alcohol market.
Totally.
So if they can create you new flavors, that's a real advantage.
Absolutely. And they emphasize that it's a completely natural process, which is important for a lot of people these days.
Absolutely.
Then there's the big one, being able to market themselves as offering the world's most sustainable drinks.
Yeah. In today's world, that's a powerful claim.
Huge.
It could attract a whole segment of consumers who are really concerned about the environment.
Totally. And they even talk about turning production into a carbon sink.
That's ambitious.
What does that even mean for alcohol production?
Well, in simple terms, it means they'd actually be removing more carbon from the atmosphere than they're putting in.
Like a forest?
Yeah, like a forest, absorbing CO2, but with drinks.
Wow.
So if their whole process, the energy they use, the sourcing of any other materials, even distribution, results in a net removal of CO2, then yeah, they could be a carbon sink.
That's a high bar.
It is.
But they're in a good position to achieve it with their core technology.
Yeah, using captured CO2 as a primary input is a big advantage.
So let's shift gears a bit and talk about their overall philosophy, because Aircohol really emphasizes a cheerful approach to sustainability.
Yeah, they do.
Their slogan is, "Cheers, planet."
I like it.
Me too?
Sketchy.
Right, and it feels like a deliberate move away from the doom and gloom we often hear about climate change.
Yeah, I think that's smart.
Do you think this positive framing will resonate more with consumers who are maybe feeling overwhelmed or even guilty about climate change?
It's a good question.
Because sometimes that negativity can be paralyzing, right?
Absolutely. Climate action can feel daunting.
So framing sustainability as something positive and engaging
Yeah, like Aircohol's doing.
could be way more effective.
It could make it feel less like a sacrifice and more like a positive choice.
Right, and that can make a big difference.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so zooming out a bit, they say the global alcohol industry produces hundreds of megatons of CO2.
Hundreds of megatons. That's hard to even fathom.
It's a crazy amount, and it really highlights the scale of the problem.
Yeah, alcohol production, especially conventional methods that rely on agriculture,
Right.
have a significant carbon footprint.
And Aircohol is tackling this head on by using that CO2 as their main ingredient.
Right, preventing it from being released into the atmosphere.
The potential for reducing emissions is huge.
Huge if this technology can be adopted widely.
And the founder, Simo Hämäläinen, makes a point of saying that no crops are harmed in their production process.
Yeah, emphasizing the potential to move away from traditional agriculture.
Which would have so many benefits.
Right, less land, use less water consumption, fewer emissions from transporting raw materials.
It's a whole system change.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the team behind all this, because they list their founders on the website.
Right.
Simo Hämäläinen as CEO, Elina Peltoma as chief scientist, and Tomi Sundström as CTO.
That's a good mix of expertise.
Right. Business, science, and technology all covered.
Seems like a strong leadership team.
And they also have Timo Pasola as finance lead and Joanne Salazar as bioprocess specialist.
Those roles are crucial too.
Absolutely, for securing funding and managing finances and making sure those biological processes are running smoothly.
For sure.
And the fact they provide contact info for everyone shows a level of transparency.
It does.
Which is important for a company like this.
Absolutely. Transparency and engagement are key when you're trying to change the world.
So who are they working with and who's supporting them?
Well, they've got an R&D loan from Business Finland.
Which is a big deal, right?
Yeah, it means the Finnish government is backing them.
And their technology is already installed and active for R&D at a distillery and brewery called Briquettes in Finland.
Real-world testing.
Exactly. And that's a crucial step to prove their tech can work on a larger scale.
Absolutely. Moving beyond the lab and into a real production setting.
They were also part of the Start Life Food and Agritech Accelerator.
Which is a great program.
Yeah, it gives them access to mentors and investors in the food tech space.
Exactly, the kind of support a startup needs.
And their headquarters are at Maria 01 in Helsinki, which is like a startup hub.
Yeah, being in that environment can really help a company grow.
So putting it all together, Aircohol seems to be onto something really big.
I think so.
They're taking on a major environmental challenge and turning it into a delicious opportunity.
And a potentially profitable one.
Right. So for you all listening, imagine a future where your favorite drinks have a much smaller impact on the planet.
It's an exciting prospect.
That's what Aircohol is working towards. And it makes you wonder, could this model of capturing and converting CO2 be applied to other industries too?
That's the big question.
I mean, what other waste streams could we turn into valuable resources?
It's a really interesting thought.
This deep dive into Aircohol gives us a glimpse into the innovative solutions that are out there.
Yeah, it shows we can tackle climate change in creative and even enjoyable ways.
Exactly, and that's a message worth raising a glass to.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that.
Thanks for listening to the Nordic Venture Show. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more stories of innovation from the Nordics.